Welcome to the Linen Closet. Whisky Hunter here. Thanks for joining me again for another episode. One of the things that come out, I guess it's towards the end of December around here in the California area, is BTAC, Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And it's kind of hard to find. It's pretty much hard to find anywhere, and it's very allocated, and most stores don't get it. Some get one or two bottles. Some of them try to raise them to secondary prices. And when you're out hunting for bottles around that time of year, you're always hoping to find some of that. Well, I did last year, or this past December. Maybe it was November. And I came across a 12-year Rip Van Winkle, Lot B, and a George T. Stagg. And I think the Lot B was $89 and the George T. Stagg $99. And these bottles on the secondary market, a Stagg is probably $475, $500, and Lot B is probably $350 to $400, I'm guessing, or so. They demand a pretty crazy price, and well, I do like some bourbons for the most part. You know, I am a scotch guy. So I had these in my linen closet, and I heard about somebody that had a number of older bottles, and I just love older bottles of single malts from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I don't know what it is or why it tastes better to me from those years. Maybe the trees aged longer, so the casks had older wood and flavors imparted more into the whiskey. I'm not sure. Paxarette was used, and as I've mentioned before, in sherry casks. But in any case, I find them, as a lot of enthusiasts find them, to be better from a number of years ago. In any case, I was put in touch with this person, and I told him, I've had some Buffalo Trace, I'm interested in trading, and he had some bottles, or a bottle that he was willing to trade for it. So let me show you this trade, and again, it's all about relationships, and sometimes it's not what it started with what I found in a store, but it ended up with something that I really wanted, and I couldn't pass by the Buffalo Trace and leave it there at such an inexpensive price, knowing what the secondary prices were. So I did a trade with him, and I got this bottle in this really nice looking box. It's kind of a reddish mahogany box, but what's in the bottle is a 2006 Springbank 25-year-old, 46% ABV. There's no color added in Springbanks. It's non-chill filtered. The color is just gorgeous in this. 25 years. Only 1,200 bottles of this 25-year in 2006 were produced. It's a refill sherry butt. And I have not opened this yet. It's 46% ABV. I may have mentioned that. So I traded away the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection for this bottle. I don't even think, you can't even find it. You have to find someone that has a bottle that's willing to let it go. And he was, and I have it, and I'm happy about that. I love Springbank. It's one of my favorite distillers. It's a family-owned distillery. A lot of people aren't familiar with Springbank, but it is one of the best distillers out there. The quality of the whiskey they put out year after year after year is unbelievable, and older Springbanks are crazy. So staying with Springbank, I'm going to review a Springbank. And only a couple years ago did I get into Springbank. I tasted my first one and I was hooked. Springbank has what they call a funk, a Springbank funk. It's kind of like an oily, funky smell, not in a bad way, but in a good way. and you find it in most Springbanks. We're going to be looking at today the Local Barley. This came out last year, in 2016. 9,000 bottles were produced. Local Barleys were also made in the 90s. Those bottles are astronomical in price. This came out, like I said, last year. It's a cask strength whiskey. Let me see if we can get this open. There we go. There we go. Oh, I parafilmed this. Didn't remember that. So here's the whiskey. Again, no color added, non-chill filtered. 16 years in ex-bourbon. I think it's 80% ex-bourbon and 20% sherry casks, if I'm not mistaken. It's hard to find a bottle of this now. If you do come across this, get it. Springbanks are not cheap. Almost all of Springbank are single malts. They really don't sell their whiskey for blends. They make, I think, 2 of their own blends, but almost everything produced is a single malt by them. And they're not cheap. This probably goes for over $200 for a bottle now. It may have been $180 when it came out. It could even be more. Like I said, they get sold fast. They started to do a yearly release. Last year was the 16-year-old. Maybe in the last 6 to 8 weeks they came out with their second release, which is I believe it's a 13-year-old. Could be an 11-year-old. And so that's what we're going to try here. Like a lot of bottles I have a couple samples of this that were sent to me. So I've got about 3 ounces here. I have a couple bottles of this. Whenever I come across this, I'm going to get another bottle. So Springbank is one of 2 distilleries in Scotland that perform every step of the whiskey process in-house. The only other distiller is Kilchoman. And this Springbank Local Barley, everything is produced locally right in the region. In fact, Springbank not only does everything in-house, they also even make their own bottles in-house. This barley comes from a farm called Low Machramore, which is just miles down the road from Springbank. One of the other things they do, which most distillers don't do anymore, is 100% of their barley is floor malted. And what floor malting is they spread the barley out in a large warehouse floor about 6 inches deep, and they rake it a number of times a day to turn it into malt. It's a very time-consuming process. It's a very old style. Almost no distillers do it anymore, but it's part of what gives you the quality of almost all Springbanks that are released. I encourage you to try a Springbank if you have an opportunity. It's not something you'll normally find at any whiskey bar or restaurant. They probably won't even know what Springbank is. So, and I'll say that also the water even comes locally to Springbank from the loch that's in the region. So, and it's in Campbelltown. Let's look at the color of this. This is a honey gold, and you know, the legs, it's not that viscous really. The legs are running very fast. It's not that old of a spirit. The nose. Immediately you get malt. This is 100% malted barley. You get the Springbank funk, and it's kind of like a salty seaweed, vegetable oil kind of aromatic. It's not bad, but it's distinctive to Springbank, and it's some hint of it is in almost all their expressions that I taste. Not everybody's the same. We all have our own taste for different expressions. There's honey in here. Though it's a high and cask strength whiskey at, like I said, 54.3%, it is not assaulting to the nose whatsoever. There's no alcohol burn when you're nosing this. There's vanilla in there from bourbon casks, a saltiness. There's fruits, orchard fruits. I think I mentioned honey. And when I say orchard fruits, I mean fresh picked orchard fruits. Apples, apricots, peaches. It's a complex nose. Onto the palate. It's fruity. It's a very mouth tingling. Of course, it's 54% ABV. Dances on your tongue, kind of like pop rocks. It's fruity. Like a lot of Springbanks, I get strawberries, a hint of strawberries in it. The fresh picked fruit. The malt. Another sip. There's some smoke there. It's not Isla kind of smoke. There's a hint of smoke, very light. A little ashy. There's caramel, sweet oak. The honey that is in the nose is there. The vanilla from the bourbon. It's a really, really tasty. Let's try it with a drop of water. See what we get from that. Springbank also produces two other distillery expressions, and that's Long Grow, which is a peaty, very heavily peated whiskey, and Hazelburn, which is non-peaty, which come from Cabletown and Springbank. That water, and we only put a drop or so in, brings out much more maltiness in the dram. A lot more of the fruits. Oh, it really brings out those strawberries. Strawberries and whiskey, who would have thunk? Really a freshness. It gives you a floral, well, a coastal kind of standing on the ocean, or standing on the beach of the ocean, and getting the aroma as the waves come in. Wow, it really opened this up. I'll say that this whiskey, like all whiskeys, I let sit for 15-20 minutes poured before I come to visit you on this thing. Let's try it with the water. The fruit that was on the nose with the water is not as fruity on the palate after the water. The mouth feels extraordinary. It's still a high ABV, even with a drop of water. It's probably in the high 40s. It brings out that high ABV brings out a ton of flavor in this thing. I get more of that vegetable oil kind of taste. That's not bad. I don't drink vegetable oil. It's a great dram. I encourage you to pick this up. It's a great representation of Springbank. If you find this, grab it if you can afford it. The finish is long. Leaves that fruit, remnants of fruit on the palate, kind of a taffy and sweet oak. And after the tingling subsides, it's a buttery kind of feeling left in your mouth. It's not drying, it's watering. It's really good. I'd score this a 90. There are better Springbanks, but you know, of course, you jump up in cost, but this is really good. Thank you for joining me. If you liked this episode, please click the like button. If you'd like to see more of what I'm doing here, please subscribe. And if it's something your friends would like, please share it with them. I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate you subscribing to the channel, and I look forward to the next time we meet. Thanks. Have a great night.